Hey man, real say shit. You already know what the fuck going on. So, in light of the situations with these artists that have been, these rap artists that have been dying and stuff, there's been like a constant trend among it. And the biggest artists who have been dying recently, including Jacob the Ruler, King Von, Mo, and others, were signed to this label called Empire. So there's a lot of speculation on what this means, so we're gonna get into this shit right now. But before we do, make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, and let's run this shit the fuck up. You already know. And make sure you copy the merch in my motherfucking bio. Yes sir. Alright, so let's just get into it. So Empire, it's a new type of label format that is coming up right now, and it has been getting a lot of criticism lately. People don't know if it's because they're investing in like high risk artists on purpose, or if they're just trying to give street people a bigger outlet, or just in general that's like the type of artist that fits the criteria of an Empire. But it seems that a lot of the artists that are signed to this label have died, and I already kind of named a couple, but before we get into it, let me kind of explain about Empire. So Empire is founded by this guy named Ghazi Shami, who's I think he's from the US, and he basically was like a music technology student. It was founded in 2010, and it first started getting like larger on a larger scale by a couple of artists that signed. It sort of is starting a new movement among labels in doing something different than other labels. I know for a lot of artists that are signed to Empire, they actually own their masters, and by they I mean the artist actually owns their masters, so they're like basically independent, you feel me? Like for all purposes they're independent, but they probably really just split some of their royalties with the company. And it became kind of like evident that something is like super weird, in that in the past 2 years, several major Empire signed artists have died, going from I think Mo was the first one, who was like really big in Dallas. King Von was the second one. Then we got Young Dolph, which we'll get into in a second. And then we just recently got Draco. So that's 4 artists right there that have died. Granted that all these artists, I guess they came with their own risk because they were all like heavily, I guess, street affiliated artists. But at the same time, like the whole point of like adding a label, like it should be giving them some type of security. That's what I would think. But I guess the main thing that attracted them to the label was the ability to stay really independent. They get to keep their masters, which is like a different type of deal, because usually when you get signed to a label, like they're probably gonna own your masters and get like 80% of the royalties really, and you're probably gonna get 20. And that is kind of like the downfall of the labels. But then I guess Empire kind of realized that you can make money letting them have the masters, and then I guess they get a small percentage of the royalties, and then really they're sort of like a liaison between the artists and like publications, and getting them on like major publications and stuff. So they're just kind of above like being like completely independent. So I don't really even know. I would say it's like a hybrid independent deal. It's not really like 100% independent, because it's not like them doing everything themselves, like getting on these publications and stuff like that. And they just recently actually signed Money Man for $1 million in Bitcoin. So that's like a thing. That's like an actual example of them signing someone. So I'm not really 100% what the deal structures are. It's kind of hard to find that information, but if I were to guess, it would be something like that, or something where if they give you an actual large advance like that, like how they did Money Man, then I would probably, maybe they're not getting their masters taken, but I would assume that they're probably they don't own their masters if they're taking a big ass check like that, and it's probably for like a project or something like that. But the whole thing that is kind of the issue is, if you're gonna be investing in these artists, why aren't you gonna like have security? Because it's like an investment. Like if you look at Empire, from the outside, from like a layman's point of view or something, doesn't it seem like a weird like instance that all these artists are dying? Granted, they're independent, but it's like hybrid independent, like we were saying. They're technically signed, so it's not completely independent, but like they're putting their investments out there and they're just letting them fucking die. Like, doesn't that sound like an issue, you know? Like, you never see this happening on like the regular, and it's usually like these people, and it's like, I don't even know what would make people want to sign to Empire like after this type of situation, when it's like several people who have died that were signed to the label. And like, I don't know, man, like it's just crazy. I mean, labels, I feel like they don't do enough really in protecting their artists, especially like some of the labels. I don't know if they don't just go for high risk artists or whatever, but even like you can even like, there's like a whole history of labels not having like the artist's actual safety in mind, which shows that they don't really care. They're just looking at them for a quick buck, you feel me? Like, you could look at the whole Empire situation. You could look at like Victor, for instance, who basically didn't give Pop Smoke security when there was like definitely credible threats on his life, and he definitely, as a rapper that be flexing hella money and shit, definitely should have security. So it's not uncommon. But it's just like, they like, for instance, like the Victor situation, they only have one artist who died and they have a bunch of artists who didn't die. So maybe they could look at it as, oh, we didn't realize. But like, at this point, Empire, don't you think that they should be like definitely hiring security, like 100%? Take it out of the royalties or whatever. Just give these niggas security so they don't fucking die. Especially in the Draco situation where he died at his job, man. Like, that's crazy. That is definitely like, obviously they probably were expecting to have event security, but they need to be having a security detail, especially if you're making money out their music and it's enough money to fund a whole company, you feel me? Like, they need to be having security. It makes no sense. You don't see these like bank trucks driving around with no security, with like fucking like nobody in there. Like, those bank trucks be driving around like with armed security, and it's kind of like the same thing, because these rappers are probably worth more than the money that's in those bank trucks at any given time, you feel me? Like, especially when their catalog is so like expensive, and they probably own the masters. But if they were to own the masters in some scenarios, I wouldn't be surprised, because everybody's deal is different. There's no such thing as a cookie cutter deal. But I'm pretty sure for like Dolph's situation, I don't think they own his masters. Or I don't know about King Von. I'm not 100% if they own them. But if they did own them, then that would kind of like open up the realm of conspiracy theories, because this is what a lot of people were saying, because they were saying that they were letting them die because they were probably like making money off of them. And honestly, I think that it could be a business model, but they would only work if they really own the masters. Because I mean, I guess if they're just making royalties, but then it's like the rate is going to be the same whether they're making music or not. But I guess when they're making royalties, they're still going to make like a big ass check for real. Like, especially if they have like a small percentage, like even like 20%, and like they don't even have to do publication or anything. Like, they don't have to do any of that shit really, like, because the fans are gonna blow up their music after they fucking die. But I'm pretty sure a lot of these artists own their masters, so like that's why I would say like those small amount of royalties, I guess, would go up. But if the actual label owned the masters, that's definitely an incentive for people to invest in high like risk artists that have a high potential of getting into an altercation or something. And then like when they die, you're gonna get the masters, and then you're just gonna get all that money for eternity, which is definitely fucked up. But I feel like the other side of this could be just that the person Gazi, who runs Empire, he definitely could just be like the type of guy that sees the potential in these high risk artists and sees that like that is what sells. Ultimately, when it comes to that genre of rap, which is like hard gangster shit, no matter what like area you're from, like you got King Von from the Midwest, you got Draco from the West, you got fucking Dolph from the South. Like, it doesn't really matter like where they're from. All that matters is like if they're saying this stuff that could be true, it's kind of shock factor and people be fucking with it. Like people like to like watch that type of shit. I don't know, because people, at least in America, are like super intrigued with violence, and a lot of people from other places, or like the suburbs, or like people from like white communities that never really got to see this type of street life, maybe like nice white communities, never got to see this type of street life, see that stuff, and then they can maybe relate to some of the stuff they're saying just under general sense, not like the street shit, but like they get motivation from it or something like that, and maybe that's what makes them super popular as well. I feel like it could be one or the other. I'm leaning more towards the dude is like just investing in high risk artists because he sees that's what sells and the shock factor doing so. But then if you're gonna risk like investing in these high risk artists, you need to have like the protection to work with them, you know? Like for real, like how do you like there's always been high risk artists. You look at Jay-Z, you look at Snoop Dogg, like coming from where they come from, they would be considered